morning. Welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering the importance of church on this year, Tuesday morning. Rise and shine and give God all the glory you can give Him this day. And this morning here, we're looking at a topic: can a Christian be tough on crime? Can a Christian be tough on crime? This is what we're looking at here. So what if a Christian is working in law enforcement, in the government, in any type of entity that has to enforce or prosecute or do any type of deal with criminal behavior? Can a Christian be tough on crime? What if the Christian is a president? He advises the president. What if he's a advisor to a governor? Can a Christian be tough on crime if a Christian is a lawyer and became a prosecutor? So this is what I want to look at here this morning. With you here is, can a Christian be tough on crime? As you know, yesterday I'd cover about leadership, and I want to continue this type of talk for the rest of the week. As you know, we're in what we call the President's Day weekend or week. So let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you again for the blessings of your word, the blessings of knowing the only true God. Thank you for the liberty that you give us, dear Father, and the wisdom you give us from your word. Pray that you may bless us for Christ's sake. Amen. So this is a very important thing. I've heard this thing over the years, especially when people are running for office. When they're running for office, they always say they're a tough on crime person, or their opponent is not tough on crime. So, this thought has popped in my mind, this idea here of a district attorney, a governor, a mayor, a sheriff, various different groups of people who run for office, and they normally say they're tough on crime. And so I wanted to look at this issue here, this issue of, can a Christian, a person that loves Jesus, be tough on crime? So in Matthew 22, verse 37 through 39, Matthew 22, verse 37 through 39, we read, Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So the question that I'm exploring this morning and meditating upon this morning, and if you're listening to me this afternoon or this evening, whenever you listen to podcasts or replay, is can a person who is a Christian, who is described as this person that we just read, that love the Lord God with all their heart, all their soul, and all their mind, can this person be tough on crime? And can this person who described that love their neighbor as themselves, can the person be tough on crime? And the straight up answer for that is yes, obviously. I'll give you the answer. But I want you to listen, keep listening for my reasoning here. What I want to deal with, because I deal with a lot of social events. So this person here, if they love God with all the heart, that means they're going to be faithful to the commandments that has to do with worship, that has to do with respect to God and to His property, which is the earth. The earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. So a Christian can be a person that is not a polluter. So a Christian who is in office or in government can enforce, laws that are going against polluters. So that's logical, because the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. God is the one that created the heavens and the earth. Also, a Christian here can be a person who, as he says, secondly, they can love their neighbor as themselves. So a person who is tough on crime, on the surface, just a general statement, would be a person that will do everything to protect their neighbor from harm caused them by evildoers. So a person who is a Christian can be tough on criminals. Not just the idea that I want to give you food, not that part only, but the part also that's saying somebody who's being abused, like Job says, he would snatch the prey, the oppressed, out of the mouth of the oppressor. So he would be somebody that could be viewed as tough on crime. So you can be a Christian and be tough on crime. No problem there. So if you look at Revelation 12 verse 17, Revelation 12 verse 17, it says, "And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus." So here is described in the last days that there will be a people who keep the commandments of God, all 10 commandments, and have the testimony of Jesus. So they would agree with Matthew chapter 22, verse 37 through 39, but also they are commandment keepers. Just in case somebody could say, well, the new commandment God gave is just to love. Love God, love man. But how you know what love to man is? You don't rob me. And also how you know what love to God is? You worship God and you keep his commandments. So here the Bible describes the people who, again, these people could be viewed as tough on crimes because they are pro-law, pro-commandment. We're for the commandments. We don't believe in thou shalt, we don't believe in killing and adultery and theft and covetousness and all that. So hence, if you don't believe in it, you could do a job that you're tough in crime. You're tough in criminals, those who are hurting their fellow human beings, causing them harm. And so, yes, the answer to it is you could be tough in crime. But in our society, it is not as simple as that, because human beings are themselves sinners. And human beings have issues that cause them to seem like they're tough in crime, but they're really not tough in crime. Now notice here in Matthew chapter 24, verse 46 through 51. Matthew chapter 24, verse 46 through 51. Here Christ talks about, and the main point I'm talking about is there the hypocrites. Now notice here it says, "Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing his work. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. But and if that evil servant shall say in his heart, My Lord delayed his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants." So he's not doing right, he's doing violence to his fellow servants. "And shall eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant when shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So think about that. Lord says, there's people who are servants. You think his servants are those who uphold the commandments, bless their neighbor as themselves. But if the servant start to lose faith and start to think, hey, probably the Lord delays coming, and start to eat and drink with this, the drunken, and start to beat his fellow servant, the Lord says, I'm going to appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. So obviously hypocrites are not even God's servant. Because they're faking. They're not true. And this idea here of tough and crime, problematic with it, because it's a straightforward question and it's a straightforward answer. A Christian can be tough and crime. But the problem as a Christian that I personally have to deal with is that often when I hear people say tough on crime, what it means is tough on certain people. It's cold. It's not straight. It's what they call a dog whistle. The dogs can hear it, but the rest of the people can't hear it, what is being whistled. And so there are people who are hypocrites. They're saying they're tough on crime, but they're not as tough as they ought to be. So an example of this here with these hypocrites is in John chapter 8, verse 1 through 11. John 8, verse 1 through 11, as we look at, can a Christian be tough on crime? And the answer for that is yes, absolutely yes. Can be very tough on crime. We don't want nobody to hurt us or hurt our neighbor. Absolutely. Now look at John 8 with me here, verse 1 through 11. This is a story of the woman caught in adultery. And you're going to see the actions of the hypocrites. And you're going to see the actions of Christ. And the actions of Christ could be interpreted that Christ is weak in crime, that Christ is pro-adultery. But to the contrary, as you know, Christ says, even if you look at a woman and think about having sex with her, you already have committed adultery. So Christ is very tough on crime. Christ set the bar way high. So the same Jesus who said you shouldn't even look at a woman and start thinking about sex is the same Jesus who now technically people use to say he excuses adultery or is weakened crime. But not that. The issue is not Christ weakened crime. Is the issue is dealing with the hypocrisy. So often when the question asks or when we make our arguments and we talk about a certain social issue, some people interpret that we probably have a liberal leaning and that we are excusing criminality. But the problem is not excusing criminality. It's the problem is dealing with those who are supposed to be tough on crime or claim to be tough on crime, but what it is they're only tough on the weak. And that's the real problem. And that's will be a subheading. It's not so much tough on crime, it's being tough on weak people. So notice here, it says in verse 1 that Jesus went onto the Mount of Olives. Now, Christ would go to the Mount of Olives to pray, because when you're dealing with issues like this, like even me talking about this here, you have to be prayed up and you have to be studied up, because these hypocrites, they're tricky. They will make you look like you're not tough on crime because they're weak, and they themselves are tough not on crime. They're tough on people who are basically the weak. See, a bully is always strong for the weak. He's never strong for the strong because he's a hypocrite. He's playing a game. So Christ is up in the Mount of Olives and he prays because he's about to go down. He's going to face a tight situation. The whole chapter 8, if you read it, of John, is tough. It's tough for any of us to deal with who stand for principle, because the hypocrites are always playing games. Notice here in verse 2, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they had set her in the midst. Pause. So the scribes and the Pharisees, the scribes would be more like the theologians. They're the one that would literally the ones that copied the Bible. So the theologians, these are the guys who you normally see in seminaries. They teach the pastors, and that's why there's so much confusion with the pastors. Anyhow, so the scribes and the Pharisees are the religious elite. Those are the ones that sit at the head of the church. They make the decisions that everybody has followed. So this is the echelon, the top echelon, the top leadership of the church. And these guys brought a woman in adultery. Now you're wondering, that's kind of a strange behavior. These PhDs, leaders in the country, are out in the midst of the night or the day. It would be the night because Christ was up on the mountain praying all night, and in the morning he went to teach the people. So somehow over the night they're there setting up this female to get caught in adultery because they caught her in adultery. So notice in verse 8, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. So they're saying basically, look, it's not just she's taken in adultery because somebody told us. She was taken in adultery in the very act. That means basically she was pulled off the guy, or the guy was pulled off her. So it's real. This is as raw as you get. Talk about in your face. This is not theology. This is not somebody talking and rustling paper about and shuffling paper. This is now as real as it gets. Real, people always talk about, hey, let's deal with the real. This is raw right here. They pull her out of that room, wherever she was, and brought her before Christ. So most naturally, there's a guy that's there. You're familiar with the story and the arguments. But remember, I'm applying this to, can Christians be tough on crime? So the guy's missing. So what was the real crime? There was a real crime of adultery. She was caught in it. Christ didn't argue that point, right? Christ didn't disagree that she was caught in adultery. Christ didn't bring up the issue also that where is the guy? Because Christ really had to deal with the hypocrites because they're the bigger problem in this situation. The scribes and the Pharisees are the problem. They're the one that literally they're setting up these people and then try to prove their righteousness. And it's easy to do that, where you set up a person and you set up the weak, and then you try to prove your righteousness of them. So Christ is going to fix their business. And look at this now here. And when he had set her in the midst, They had set her in the midst. They said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? So this is where they ask these questions, because they're going to make it seem like you're a guy, are you a Christian female or male? Are you tough in crime? Are you pro-law? It's a setup, because what they want to do is have Christ contradict Moses. And so by doing that, Christ would be rejected. And so this is where they do, because they put these riddles and these real life scenario. And now imagine if you're working as a police or a district attorney or as a governor. If you are not with their scheme, it seems like on the surface it seems like you're not tough in crime. So they said tempted him that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. So Christ just started to write. See, you have to have a way to deal with these hypocrites, because, because they make it sound like, oh, they're the toughest guys in crime. And they're the most immoral cretins that we have in our society. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and he wrote in the ground. Now, what is often believed is that he's writing their sins out. He's listing them. This is what you do, this is what you do. It would be fascinating if he was actually like Mark, Trey, whatever. Just writing their name and start writing their sins. So he's writing on the ground, and they which heard it, being convicted of their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest. Fascinating. It didn't begin at the youngest, it began at the eldest. This is important also, because normally with older people, they always can play. You've been in church all the time and they say, oh, this worship service, we're going to do it for the young people. But it's the old people want to get their groove on. But they use the young people as an excuse. Also, in situations like this, the older heads normally rile up and make a fool of the young people, because young people are normally naive and idealistic. And it's easy to get them all riled up. Yeah, these women, this woman is no good and Christ is no good. Let's run this thing. Probably even the young people didn't even know what the older people were doing, because the older people normally are more crafty because they've been doing it longer. So the old guy walk out. The old probably pervert, this old pedophile, this old rapist that's been sitting in the seat of Moses for all these years, this old thief, this old, what they said, dirty old man that set up this young lady. He first walk out. Him sin probably, Christ could probably walk right all day. Walked out first. But I guarantee if you ask the society, who's the toughest guy, a person in crime? Oh yeah, that old dirty old man over there. He tough on crime. He tough on weak people like this woman. So when he continued to write, and they all walk out. So verse 8 at 7, I think it says, so when they continued asking him, in verse 8, and again he stooped down and wrote, and they which heard it began convicted, and they went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. And when Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? No man condemn you? It's a very good question. No man condemn you? Or you gonna condemn? You know what I mean? Think about all these, as I say, these evil theologians getting into all kind of perversion. I was reading one this morning. It's the headline news right now on Christian Post. If you go over there, you see one of the big leaders in one of the big churches in America here. He had to confess to actually placing pornographic material. I think it's pedophile pornographic material or pornographic material on another theologian or another person, another pastor computer who was trying to mess up the other pastor. And by putting pornographic material and actually said it out loud, and it was recorded, caught him right in the act, so to speak. So imagine these people, oh yeah, they're tough on crime. They're for, against criminals. They're cretins. So notice here, verse 10, it says, when Jesus had lifted himself up, he saw none but the woman. They all, you just imagine you just stay there and just start keep writing. And as he wrote, they just look, probably read what he's writing. And notice now, this is important because I've been dealing with this a lot, even when it comes on to people who are anti-abortion, anti-immigration, anti-this. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the abortion one, but I'm going to talk about the rest of it. And they have sinned some terrible sins in their lives, but they're so aggressive against everybody. But notice here now how Christ is a class act, as they would say in our society. Class act. Christ didn't stand up and start blurt out and embarrass these Pharisees and scribes, their sins. He didn't just stand up and say, you did this, you did that. Because that's human nature, right? We're quick to want to do that too, even when we're defending the right. Christ here wasn't trying. They're standing above Christ. The woman is there, she's there. He kneels down, come to her level. He stooped down and he start writing. Now, whatever he wrote, that's very interesting, because whatever he's writing on the ground, I'm assuming he's writing in dust or clay or sand, it's going to be blown away. It's not permanent record. So they're seeing it. Probably some of the people saw it, but he's discreet with them. He's being gentle with them. You find Christ actually is very gentle with the Pharisees up until Matthew 23, up until towards the end of his life before they try to kill him. He's very gentle with them. Even when he talks to them, sometimes you could say, well, it's kind of rough, but he's still being gentle with them because their sin was so great, because they were such hypocrites. And that's the issue when we talk about toughen crime. Because often the people who are some of the, over and over again, news after news, you see, even yesterday, you see these people, they're so aggressive against others. But then when it comes out, you find out that there are some horrible criminals, but they act as if, they're so pro this or they're pro rules and laws. And you find out they're sick individuals. So if you look at this, Christ here dealt with them very kind. He could have really embarrassed them. But what he did, he wrote their sins in a non-permanent record. So it's not like say Christ didn't even write their sins. He exposed them to a certain degree, but it wasn't permanent record. Couldn't cite it. I'm guaranteed after they get up, I don't even know if he probably took his foot and basically just dusted away. Because that's how Christ is towards sins. But sinners are very harsh towards other sins. And they're very tough on crime, they claim. But what it is, they're tough on weak people. Because you see, they're tough on this woman. So this is beautiful in his dealing. His dealing is always gentle and merciful with sinners. But sinners, and sometimes the worst of sinners amongst us, the ones that do some of the worst crimes, they are rough. And it seems like they like to be rough and women. So when Jesus lifted up himself, he saw none but woman. And he said unto her, woman, where are thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, no man, Lord. Jesus said unto her, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. So Christ did acknowledge that she was caught in adultery. He said, go and sin no more. Don't be doing that adultery business anymore. Don't fall for that type of trap. Don't be entrapped in their deeds. So this shows you that Christ is still tough on crime. Christ is still against the act of adultery. He did not close it out and say, which some people preach this. There are many preachers, this is how they would preach this. They would say, she said, no man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, neither do I condemn thee. And then they'll stop. But Christ finished by saying, go and sin no more. Christ is saying the sin of adultery, I don't promote it. But I'm not going to do you like how they do it. So the question is now, could the statute of Moses still stand? Yes, Christ didn't disagree with it. Because remember, the statute that Moses wrote, that the two of them should be brought out and stoned, was given by Jesus. It's Jesus himself who gave it. But the guy was supposed to be brought there. So the issue is when we talk about toughen crime, the issue is it has to be, as they call it, blind justice. There can't be tough on one group and not tough on another. That means if two people were caught in the very act, and if the law should be instituted, even at the point though the death penalty could not be issued by a Jew, the Romans would have to issue that death penalty. But still, even if the law was issuable, you could do it, you could carry it out. You'd have to be able to grab the guy, grab the female, and stone both of them. And then at that point, I would agree, no problem. I'm not going to disagree with Jesus. He gave the rule. And if the rule is the wages of sin is death, and the death penalty should be issued over adultery, then let's let the stoning begin. But you cannot bring one or not the other. And that is the issue when it comes on to, especially in our modern world, that often is not a problem, so to speak, with the rule. Because people believe that we're not pro-law, pro-rule, because we say, why is it that you go for the weak? Why you don't go after the strong? And imagine if Christ had said, yeah, go ahead, she did commit adultery. We need to find the guy, but you can stone her right away. And then go get me the guy, and then stone him next. What Christ would do is set up another bad precedent, and that precedent he would set up is that entrapment or setup, that you could set a person up and then give them life. If you probably listened to me, probably was last year or so, there was a famous case in New York where they set up some homeless guys. The state set up some homeless guys and tell them that they were going to blow up some synagogue. And then they give them, I think, 25 to life or 20, something like that. And so we don't believe in that. Tough on crime doesn't mean you get some homeless people and because they're hungry and they have no good place to sleep. And you trick them with money and so forth and then get them to say they were going to blow up a synagogue. And then you lock them up. And because the time you're doing that and wasting time doing this stupid thing where you're locking up these innocent people, these people that have nothing to do with that, they just want to hide. You weren't investigating now the conservative white guy in Pittsburgh that went into the synagogue and go kill 11 Jews. So, this is when I see the type of stuff that God doesn't like ugly. For the Jewish community to accept the 5 black guys in New York to get locked up, the homeless guys, claiming that they were going to kill Jews. God doesn't like ugly. Those type of stuff always come back as a blowback. The time the FBI and the New York police was trying to entrap those guys, they should have been investigating real criminals who want to really do harm to Jews. So when you look at this, is that we can be tough on crime as Christians because we're law-abiding citizens. We believe in the Ten Commandments and we believe that law must be upheld to protect people who are being harmed, to protect the society in general, to protect innocent people, and to protect children. And this is important to note. Notice here, I was watching on Friday. I didn't watch it on Friday, but I was watching yesterday. The press conference with the President Donald Trump, that he did on Friday, and I was watching it. And part of the press conference, didn't watch the whole thing in entirety, but part of it that I was looking for, or some of it I was looking for, just kind of scanning through to hear like some of the things he said about announcing the national emergency to build a wall. And then he talks about the drug problem and that in China, they don't have a drug problem because they have a death penalty. And this is all to get rid of the drug problem. Well, America has a history, and the history of America can't be ignored. The death penalty, I personally, from studying my Bible and life, I believe I'm pro-death penalty. I believe that in cases where there's not circumstantial evidence, and it's clearly demonstrated without a shadow of a doubt that a person murdered in first degree innocent people, that they should be executed for it. That's just where I believe. I even believe in flagging and stuff like that. So anyhow, so instead the president now say, because somebody say, you can't be tough on crime. I believe you can be tough on criminals. But say the president say now, we need to have the death penalty for drugs. Well, that's a problem. So somebody said, well, I thought you were pro-death penalty. Yeah, but that's a problem. Because you have to go after the people who are the drug pushers, not the people who sell the drugs per se on the street. So if you would now start rounding up all the doctors who helped created the current drug crisis, all the pharmaceutical companies and all the people over Purdue Pharma, the pharmaceutical company that make like OxyContin, and lied to the doctors that the drug was not highly addictive. If the president came out and said we are going to execute the death penalty on those people, then and then the people are selling it on the street because we want to eradicate this drug problem, I would agree. I would say let's do it. Let's do it. I'll be like, I'm with you. But if you start talking about death penalty and you're talking about the local poor guy on the side of the street selling the drug, the end seller, the person with the point of sale, and you're not gonna go for the pharmacists, the pharmaceutical companies, and the doctors that are pushing this, then I can't be for it, because this is similar to the woman caught in adultery. The law would only be executed upon the weak, the poor, those who can't defend themselves in the court of law. But if you say we're going to be primarily going after the source, the root of the problem, and we're going to start taking these doctors and chopping their heads off, then I would say let's do it. Because if you know in America what had happened in the drug epidemic, when they were taking in the drug to support the Contra, and they were flooding black communities to destroy them with drugs. They were just, if you go to prison, you'll see this. It's just packed with all these black guys, because that's where the enforcement were being done and still being done. So somebody could say, well, but they're criminals and we need to be tough on criminals. Yeah, but as the CDC had said, that whites take drugs 2.1 times more than black, but blacks are probably 10 times or 8 times more represented in jails. So the people are taking it more than the people representative in jail. So you can't be tough on crime, because it's not really crime you're tough on those people who are not white. And one have to be honest with that. But there's Christians who are not honest in their dealing with these situations. So it's not an issue. So if I come out and say, no, we have to consider these issues about tough on crime, a person will come and say, oh no, so you're not tough on crime then? I'm like, no, it's not I'm not tough on crime. I'm not tough on unfairness and discriminatory behavior. It's the same thing when you look at, the president said in the press conference also, that is a lot of stuff was said. That was crazy. He said in the press conference that if you go to the prisons, it is an evidence that more immigrants do crimes in America than native-born immigrants. But again, it goes back to enforcement. If the laws are written a certain way and the tax dollars are paid to investigate certain communities, you're going to find problems and you're going to get into issues. If you take all the jobs from the black communities after the civil rights movement and leave all these black men unemployed, you're going to find crimes, because not only idle hands but poor hands will often get itself into crime. It is not an excuse of poverty or of people who are being historically oppressed and they're acting up, but it's an issue of you need to talk about the real things that's going on. Remember, we weren't tough on crime for Wall Street. We're not tough on crime for most of Main Street. We put all our investigative power into, look, every time, think about in the last 8 years, the amount of time after the bailout that the financial companies had to do a settlement with the government because of crimes they were doing. And there was always they never prosecute. But bring me a young poor Hispanic or black or even poor white that does a crime and the district attorney is all up in his stuff. Prosecute him to the full length of the law. He's the biggest, toughest, or she's the biggest, toughest bad girl in town to prosecute. But let Chase Manhattan, Wells Fargo, all these companies that consistently do criminal activity and never they have the power to investigate and prosecute. Never. Not once. So yeah, but somebody say, oh yeah, but if you're not for, going after a little boy that went in the store and steal something, you're not tough on crime. Really? And notice here, adultery is one of those things that we just covered. One could be tough on crime, like what it is. One could try to make it seem like Christ was tough on crime. But Christ is the one that is the archangel, he's the enforcer in heaven. He's the one that gave Moses the laws. He's the one that the Bible says all principalities and powers in Colossians are executed or created through him and because of him. So he's the one that for government. He's the one that for laws and legalities. But to be done fairly. Think about it. Fornication. If you're gonna go after fornication and things like that, again, you have to be like, just go after the board. Notice here, no, give me a list of priests that have been prosecuted and gone to prison for pedophilia. I know it's in one of the branches of fornication and adultery. Where are the priests? But let a poor person, poor white, poor black, poor Hispanic, does something like that, and he be doing 25 years in jail. Let's just be tough on crime and tough across the board. If a female teacher have sex with a 14-year-old boy, let's give her 20 years in prison. Let's just be tough on crime. Just bring the hammer down on her. And I'm for that. Just bring it down. Just give her the 20 years in prison. Just the way you give a guy, you give her the 20 years in prison. And let's just be tough across the board. Let it be blind. And then you guess what happened? That's it. We're just going to be fair to all. But you can't be tough on crime and say, well, the poor guys we just throw the book at them, throw them out of the jail and throw away the key. But the priests don't get it. The rich guys in the community don't get it. The women don't get it. Just give everybody. Just say, because women saying that they need to be equal, just give them equal rights. Just bring the guillotine down. How about murder? As I say, I'm pro death penalty. Let's investigate and go after murderers and just give it to them. And we be fair. We're not going to argue against that if the rule is across the board. But if the rule is only for certain types of people, as I've heard people said in my presence, that's so rude. Well, I can't go for that, because what makes criminality different because I'm black? We all sinners. But to make this argument that only certain people have a bent towards sin, it's not true. How about immigration? This is another thing, the big thing that the president was talking about. And as I say, I've been thinking about these things especially because of the idea here that what if I was in the position, what if I'm dealing with somebody that's law enforcement? I would encourage a person to enforce the law across the board. If you pull people down, just give it. So if you look at immigration is quite important, interesting. Because I see this often. I've driven past and I see the police pull over a van. And there's a van and there's probably 8 guys in there that look Mexican. They look brown skin. And, a lot of time what the police would do, probably turn them over to ICE because they're working. Now, the law is, and the penalties, if you hire somebody that's an illegal immigrant, your first penalty can be $250 to $2,000 per illegal immigrant. And then the second offense, if you got caught again doing that, is $2,000 to $5,000 per illegal employee. And then the third is $3,000 to $10,000 per illegal employee and up to 6 months in jail. Let's just forget, if you want to fix this problem right now, today, and you want to get rid of illegal immigration, let's just make the rule straight across the board. Let's not be hypocrites here. Let's just go ahead and start it off by the big penalty. Just say if you hire an illegal immigrant, $3,000 to $10,000 and up to 6 months in jail. And if you do it a second and third time, by the time the third time, just give the death penalty right there and then. And you'll fix the immigration problem. When I see this type of stuff, when they go, you see they do a factory and they go after the factory and they round up the illegal immigrants. They should round up every supervisor, every manager, every owner of the company and lock them in prison. Just let the rule be across the board. You're aiding and abetting a criminal. Just do it. And if they keep doing as I say, just go ahead and do what the president say, like in chat, just give them a death penalty, and you will fix this problem. But when you go after the illegal immigrant and you don't go after the employer, you don't show that you're tough on crime. What you show is you're tough on people who are weak. But we are pro tough on crime. If the rule, like with a woman caught in adultery, is across the board. If the rule is both who are caught in adultery need to get the death penalty, then let's let the stones start flying and let the beatdown happen. And what would have happened is this, because this is why the guys, the Pharisees and Sadducees, couldn't stone the guy or couldn't even imagine thinking about stoning the guy. Because if you know, and if you follow churchcraft and you've been around church, these pastors, they're like foxes in a hen house. They're sleeping with those women like left, right, and center. So if you say the penalty is to stone whoever come into adultery, the first people who go against this and not want to put forward those rules would be the people who are pastors. They wouldn't go for it. Why would the pastors go for it? They get caught in adultery all the time. They're in a situation where they have these vulnerable women in the church who are longing for relationship, longing for stability, and the pastor often is looked upon as the guy that is stable. He's the guy that is living the life that they would want to live. They imagine themselves doing ministry and praying and devotion and all that religious stuff and having a stable life, not with a guy probably running around. And so a lot of them are attracted to the pastor. And so imagine if you say, yeah, we're going to stone the person who get caught in adultery with a woman. Who you're saying you're going to stone all the time? The pastors. They are always in it. As a matter of fact, they have so much access to female. So guess what happened? They will go for that. So that's why they carry the woman. That's why Christ started writing. They all start walking away. Ain't nobody no fool around here. So when we talk about illegal immigration and hiring illegals, guess what happened? If the law was, let's do the death penalty, this is what the president should do, and this is what I think would be interesting. I would like to see this happen. And the president should say, we're going to not only build a wall, but we're going to have the death penalty. If you hire a certain amount of illegal immigrant, you're going to get your head chopped off. What happened, the day we sign it, we're going to sign the rule, you're going to come into the White House, arrest me and chop my head off, then we could go for that. Because if you know what has been happening over the years, that whether it be construction or any type of hotel industry, casinos, those things are filled in the background with illegal immigrants working. Most of the places I've gone, is Hispanic working, doing the laundry rooms, changing the beds in the hotel, doing the food prep in the kitchen. All those, and if you've been following the news recently, you would realize that the president himself has always for years up until this year have illegal immigrants working for him. But all of a sudden now he's anti-illegal immigration and he's for the American public. But up until 2019, he was not for the American public in practice, only in word. So this is where the problem is. Can a Christian be tough on crime? Yeah, if you live in life legally, legally, you can say, hey, Lord, we need to execute the law. And the law of the country is you start to hit people with penalties, the president would have to pay a lot of money. Because as you know, the hotel industry is packed with illegal immigrants. Because a lot of Americans not going to do those jobs. Or they'll do it, but for the type of money they do it, they want basically, salary to do those jobs. So if you're pro-American, you should hire American to do those jobs. You should be willing to pay $35,000 or more a year, plus health benefits and insurance and all that, to people to change beds. And then I would say you are, red-blooded American. You're the truest American. If that was what the president was doing, I would be pro. I would be like, yeah, this is not a hypocrite. This guy is straight. How could I disagree with a person who's straight, who says, I'm going to take less profit and I'm going to pay living wages to the people who change my bed, the people who wash my laundry, the people who vacuum the carpets, the people who food prep, not the chef, the food preppers in my restaurant, and they're going to be red-blooded Americans. This is what I'm going to pay. I wouldn't go against him. I would say, no, this guy is straight. This guy's not a hypocrite. None of us would argue with that. What we argue against is the issue of hypocrisy. If you follow the news, and I'm trying to find the confirmation for this, but what I've been seeing online and I heard is that the person was supposed to be UN ambassador. She used to work for Fox News, and she had a stint for real briefly to be a spokesperson or the talking person for the president. I can't remember what it's called. Well, this lady was supposed to be, and she withdrew last week her nomination from being the ambassador to the UN. And the news on the street is that she had illegal nannies. I'm like, why do that? If you're so Fox News, love American, pro-American, anything white is good, then you should only have hired Americans who have a legal paperwork, no matter if they're black, white, red, or whatever, just Americans. Legal paperwork, just hire them and pay them a living wage. But what people are, they're hypocrites in practice because they see an opportunity and they want to take it. And if they were doing this, then no illegals will come to the country because they wouldn't be able to get a job. The problem is not the illegals. You see, it's easy to go after the low-hanging fruits. It's easy to go after, anybody can be tough on crime. You imagine a sheriff coming to office, yeah, I'm tough on crime. And who you tough on crime against? I'm tough on crime against those blackies over there in the poor community. They're poor, they have no jobs, and they're criminals. Why they have no jobs? Oh, because we ship their jobs abroad. Really? Are you tough on? It's easy. And if you look in history, you can see how many people are revered. And you can see, oh man, this guy was tough on crime. Who were tough against? Oh man, they're just locking up the black guys and the black women left, right, and center. They were tough on crime. But again, it's easy to say you're tough on crime. But are you really tough on crime? Notice here, again, the issue that came up was the idea that China does the death penalty for illegal drugs. And as I said earlier, if the penalty was for illegal drugs across the board, for the manufacturer, for the doctors who were pushing the drugs and get all those patients on it, if you could prove that the doctor was negligent, he was just writing 1,000 prescriptions a week, you just take him and, do a public hanging. Give him the lethal injection. Inject him with the same fentanyl that he got those people on by giving them OxyContin. Just give him a cocktail. Then why would I go against that? If that's the law of the land and the Congress vote, the Congress are there to represent the people. And they vote and say, yeah, we are for the death penalty for illegal drugs. And the Senate vote and the president sign off on it. Who am I to disagree with their choice to make sure that the doctors, just get the family who own Purdue Pharma and start killing them, start murdering the doctors and then whatever. So then when you get one of the guys inside the street who sell heroin and you say gonna kill him too, I'm not gonna argue against that because that's the law of the land, and it's applied fairly. But when you only go after the low-hanging fruits and you go after the poor people, the people who are not part of the elite in the country, that's where we disagree. And so people say, well, is your disagreement because you're against nobody? But if you say that, you're not listening to what I'm saying. I'm saying, let's make everybody die. Just go ahead and just make it happen. Just everybody that's doing these illegal activities, just take them out. But you can't say that while, historically, America has always gone. Think about it. How many people got life imprisonment for the Iran-Contra affair, where they were selling drugs in the black community to support the Contra rebels in Central America? How many people that were in the top of it? But the poor black guys, they went to prison, that were selling the drugs. But how many of the big ones are still in prison or did 25 years to life? Nobody. Everybody got off scot-free. So then it's a joke. It's a sham. It's a scam. And, people will always come to me and say, well, our people, I hear, no, they don't come to me. They never come to me, this type of stuff. But I hear people say when some bad things happen, so how could God allow this to happen to this innocent person? And I'm always hear them talk like that. And I'm like, what are they talking about? When they're doing all the evil to the innocent people that are weak, they never say, where is God? But then when things happen to people that are bad, they say, where's God? I mean, it's across the board. I remember God is the one that created hell. So ultimately, God is the one that is the arbitrator of the death penalty and the executor of the death penalty. None of us can create, so to speak, the death penalty, so to speak. We do get the consequence of our choices, but ultimately, to remove us from permanent life is God's choice. So I can't disagree with God. God says the wages of sin is death. That's his rule. Now, in Romans chapter 13, verse 10, Romans 13, verse 10, it says, love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. So this can be taken two ways. One way it can be taken, I love you. I'm not going to do anything to cause you ill. But that does not mean that I can't enforce the law. Because if you're doing something ill to somebody, you need to be stopped. Last week, I think it was Friday, there was a guy that went into a warehouse. He would work there. He was getting fired in Aurora, Illinois. He was getting fired and he went in and opened fire, killed 3 people in one room, and then ended up killing 5 more people plus injuring some police. All right. And then some more workers got shot, 6 workers, I think. The police went in there and they executed the death penalty. The police went in there, they executed the death penalty, and they eliminated him. There are some people who are extreme. They would say it's not the right of the police to execute the death penalty. I'm not one of them. I believe that the police did the right thing. You have to neutralize the person that is causing harm to other people. And if he overrun 5 police, he probably will continue overrunning other police. And so somebody had to put an end to that. So there are situations that you don't even need a court of law. The emergency is happening and you have to execute immediately. This is not working ill, because there's people who are weird. They would think that's working ill for the police to go in there and neutralize the threat. And it's not a threat at that time. To neutralize the danger is extreme, but that's not extreme. Because love working no ill to his neighbor. Love is a fulfillment of the law. Love is to stop evildoers also. And that's to me how I see it. So law enforcement, so you could be a law enforcement person and you can be tough on crime and you're doing good. You're actually fulfilling the law in my mind. In a practical sense. It might not feel loving when you're executing penalty on the evildoers. But it's the right thing, because that person, again, a guy going in a house and he's beating the daylights out of his wife and gonna beat her to death. And the police go in there and tase him and arrest him and drag him out of there and probably kick and stamp on him to subdue him. It's not a loving situation. You wouldn't feel walls warm and fuzzy watching that. It would be brutal. But is it the wrong thing to do? No. We believe that that's the right thing to do, because there's people who want to shoot up, go into supermarkets and malls and stuff like that, theaters, and shoot up innocent people, and they should be neutralized. We receive that, but we want to make sure that we're executing the penalty across the board. You can't have, like what happened, I think in South Carolina, where this guy, I think Dylan Roof, his name was, he went into a church, killed I think 9 people or killed some people. I remember how much exactly. And then when the police arrested him, they took him to the fast food restaurant. They make him have a lunch, and then they took him and locked him up. But yet those same police are accused often of going to a black neighborhood and somebody get into an argument with them and they shoot them. And you say, what a weird behavior. So when bad things happen, you can understand, because God does not like ugly. So notice here in Matthew chapter 5, verse 16 through 20. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Think not that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. So very important. You see, Christ didn't contradict the law of against that promote faithfulness in marriage. God is just saying you can execute it wrong. Whosoever therefore shall break one of the least of these commandments, whatever you think is the least, and shall teach men so, he shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach, I'll read it again, powerful, especially in the hypocritical society we live in. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Most people, they're Cretans, but they want to be able to execute laws on people that they themselves don't keep. We're not like that. We're not hypocrites. We're living up to it. We don't be using no drugs. But we believe that you should execute drugs laws across the board. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. See, the scribes and the Pharisees were hypocrites. They were just playing games. And so Christ says, look, if you're not doing better than them, you shall no wise enter the kingdom of heaven. Because their righteousness was a fake righteousness. And then today the modern scribes and Pharisees, if you're not doing right beyond them, you're not going to go into heaven just the same way. You can't be so tough on crime against poor people, but you're not tough on crime against rich people. It is a sham, it's a scam, it's a lie when they talk about they're tough on crime. But we have not seen in all these years one Wall Street person go to prison. As a matter of fact, in the last so many years, I think there's one case I remember seeing, and it was this guy who is an investment banker, and he was Indian. That was interesting. He was from India, and he went to prison. So that's why I said nobody, because you go grab an Indian and then you say, oh, you're tough on crime. You ain't tough on crime. You're joking. All these scams that went on in the financial crash, and all these settlements, even after the crash, they didn't stop doing settlements. Wells Fargo creating false accounts, and from the top down they knew what was going on, and not one person was Fargo. Who went to prison? And somebody went to prison, send me, I'll correct myself here. Nobody. So it's a scam, it's a sham, it's a conspiracy. Don't make nobody fool you. They say, oh, there's this conspiracy, the government is doing this again. The only conspiracy going on is what I'm talking about here. So that's why you like, yeah, I'm tough on crime. I believe in being tough on crime. I believe in righteousness, but not in this kind of system. That's why God has to come and do a new system, because this system is a scam. It's a bunch of fakers trying to make it look like we're tough on crime. You're not tough on crime. You're tough on poor people. Notice in Galatians 5 verse 14, Galatians 5 verse, as what Christ said just before I go from my text. Christ says he didn't come to change the law. We don't disagree with anything with law, because we not only do the things in law by God's grace, but we teach the things in laws by God's grace. That's what we do. And when you say by God's grace, I'm just saying that for those people, that's what they want to hear. But we do and teach the law. That's it. Full stop. Notice in Galatians 5 verse 14. Galatians 5 verse 14 says, for all the law is fulfilled in one word, even this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. If you look at the execution of the death penalty in places like, say, Texas, you can never come to the conclusion that they did that and not ignore the text to love their neighbor as themselves. You just couldn't come to that conclusion. There are too much innocent people that were sent to prison, and the evidence was very clear they didn't do the crime. You just couldn't come to that conclusion. So it's not that we're not pro death penalty. I believe in the death penalty, but not the way it's executed. That would be, I guess, a clearer answer to the question from my point of view. We believe that says criminals should be dealt with as criminals, but not the way we're executing it, where we've stacked the prison with poor people, with people who are marginalized, the minorities, and we ignore the crimes of people, and then we say, well, the country's going broke, yeah, because we don't prosecute criminals, and we make criminals run wild, and then the poor people go after, who is affecting the GDP in a very little way, positively or negatively. James 2 verse 8 says, if you fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, ye do well. This is what we ought to do. Love our neighbors ourselves. So it goes both ways. Both in the sense of blessing somebody. We bless anyone, no matter what their skin color, their race, or their country, or whatever. But also, we encourage the law to be upheld against every criminal, no matter what their race, their money, the class, whatever they are. And when you do this, you just fear. People don't like that, but that's just the reality. You just fear. You're not going to be like prejudicial to one person and not against another person. Just across the board. Let the guillotine fly. Let's pray. Our Father who art in heaven, I thank you again for the blessings of your word. Pray the Lord that truly as you teach us that we should not be partial to anyone, but we should love our neighbor as ourselves, and we always honor thee. Bless us, we pray, and may it always keep us in our integrity. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow morning, where we should talk about natural health. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.